How's it going, folks? Stu here. This is going to be a super difficult review to do today because there's not really any way of talking about today's film and why it works and how it works without sounding like a super pretentious dickhead. So just know that I'm fighting that uphill battle on this video. Although, that being said, pretentious dickhead analysis of films is sort of my forte. So you fuck it. Let's go full pretentious arsehole. Let's go full blazer. Glass of red at hand. Pretentious asshole initiated. I'm getting a headache. I don't wear these are my girlfriends. Why did I do this at the beginning of the video? So today we're chatting about Memoria. Fuck, you know what? No. This isn't staying on for the whole video. Not comfy at all. So Memoria, it's the latest film from Thai filmmaker Apichatpong Weerasethakul. I've never actually seen any of his films before this, so this is my first time experiencing a Weerasethakul film. And I'll be straight up with you guys, I was only really excited for this one because of Tilda Swinton, and I'd heard a lot of people saying that this had been a experience of a film, and I'd also seen some other people saying they hated it, and so I just immediately got interested. And this film was just, I mean, it just blew me away. I've really, truly loved a lot of films I've seen this year, especially over the last few weeks at the film festival, but Memoria was the first one which I immediately gave the full 5 stars. I mean, I just completely fell into this one. It is exactly the sort of film which reminds me of why I love watching films in the cinema. There's a big fuck off huge sci-fi little epic that you might have heard of called Dune dropping at the moment in cinemas, and that is getting a lot of praise for being a cinematic spectacle that is reminding us why we go to the movies, and I have no doubt that it's going to deliver in that sense. I've got faith in my boy Villeneuve. But Memoria feels like just as much of a reason to go to the cinema, just as much of an exhibition of everything cinema can and should be. I just loved this thing. There's really not much in the way of plot or narrative in the film, and that's not to say that it's a particularly abstract narrative. It's not doing all sorts of crazy shit that you get lost in. It's very much the opposite of that. It's an incredibly slow and patient look at one person's journey through kind of sound and memory and space and her interactions. The story is basically just Tilda Swinton waking up and then absorbing the world around her in different ways throughout its 2-hour runtime. And if that description's got you eye-rolling and doesn't sound like your cup of tea, it's probably not going to be your cup of tea, but I genuinely recommend checking this thing out anyway, because Memoria for me is one of those films which, despite being incredibly slow paced, I suppose, and despite not giving you a huge amount of very obvious narrative and character and plot, it's still wholly hypnotizing and insanely engrossing. I actually found that the runtime, first things first, flew by for me. I don't know if anyone else has had that experience with this film, but it's just so constantly absorbing in the way it uses sound, in the way it uses its frame, its imagery, and in the way it uses its performance from Tilda Swinton in the lead. All of those things combine to make just such an insanely cinematic spectacle. I spent every second of this film just totally in it, totally engrossed in the world that Apichatpong is able to create here. It's a very quiet film in every sense of the word. There's not a huge amount of dialogue between characters. It's very restrained in that sense. But there's a lot of sort of sitting in different environments, taking it all in. It's a slow edit, this film. It doesn't cut unless it absolutely needs to cut. And the result of that is that we're given time to fully immerse ourselves in the world of this film and to really almost dissect everything we're seeing on screen. You'll be sat watching Tilda Swinton sat next to someone asleep on the grass in this very rich and lush jungle area of Colombia, and you'll just be tuning in and out of different aspects of the frame, different things in the background, different sounds that you can hear. And that experience in itself I find to be incredibly visceral, and Apichatpong here in his direction uses that feeling and uses that way through this film to mine different ideas and themes of memory. Most obviously, I guess it's literally called Memoria, but also time and relationships, but it never really sort of serves those themes up for us on a plate, which I think is going to be the most frustrating thing for a lot of audiences about Memoria. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't understand where you're coming from. It's definitely a film which lets you sit with it and lets you decide what you make of it, and that doesn't always work for me, but I do tend to find that as long as that's done effectively by a director that knows what they're doing, I can get on board with it, and that's exactly what happened with Memoria. I was just swept up in it all. It's just gorgeous to look at. Every scene just stunning, some more obviously beautiful than others, but I always found something to take from the scenes around Tilda as she moves through the spaces of this film, but also in the sound of this thing. I mean, the sound design is some of the best sound design I've heard all year, and is one of the more obvious reasons why I'd say go watch this thing in a cinema, because it's a gorgeous sort of soundscape that's been created throughout this thing. Wine break, forgot I had that there. And Weerasethakul has this really interesting and fascinating ability to create a tone and an atmosphere which is simultaneously insanely relaxing and calm. I mean, at one point in the film, we literally do just watch a character go to sleep, but also, for me at least, never loses that feeling of intrigue. So it's a peculiar double-ended sort of experience, this thing, where I'm like, I'm relaxed as hell, but I'm also super absorbed. I'm like, I'm on the edge of my seat, but I'm kind of slouched in relaxation. Didn't actually sit like that in the cinema. Like some weirdo taking a shite mid-row. It wasn't me. I sat normally, but you know what I mean? This is Weerasethakul first film outside of the Thai language and the Thai environment, as far as I understand. And I think that adds this really interesting sense of feeling like a tourist to this whole thing, feeling like an outsider and navigating spaces and a world as someone that isn't inhabiting them normally. It bleeds through the direction, but it also bleeds through the performance from Tilda, who is very obviously an outsider in this Colombian environment. Tilda ain't Colombian, although I did like listening to her talk in Spanish. We should steer very far away from where we're about to go in this conversation. Her character is very much, I suppose, a vessel for us as an audience to navigate the worlds on screen and the environments. As such, she's quite quiet and restrained, I suppose, in her performance. But that in itself is an insane talent, and especially when you're going through a film like this one where not a lot is actually happening, it's essential that you've got someone to follow through this thing with that can keep you interested and engaged and immersed in all the same ways that all the audio visual elements are doing outside of her performance. It's also a performance that I found to be moving in many different ways and quite funny as well. And that's another thing that surprised me about Memoria. It's got a kind of really peculiar sense of humor throughout it, but it's there, and there are a few laughs in this thing, which adds to this really interesting sense of personality, which I think sort of lifts it above and is essential in lifting it above feeling like it's just doing nothing for the sake of throwing shit at a wall and calling it art. I love seeing a director using all of the different elements at his disposal from the medium of film to just mine and almost navigate through their own thoughts, maybe not even interested in giving any answers to things, but nonetheless still having a clear, I suppose, intention or way through the mess that they're making. Just not going to be for everyone, no doubt. But, and here we go, we're at the head of my pretentiousness, but we're going for it anyway. If you're willing to open yourself up to the environments and the audio-visual aspects of a film like this and just let it sort of wash through you and see where it takes you, I do think there's a lot to enjoy in this thing. I have to apologize on how vague and wish-washy some of these thoughts in this film are going to sound like they are coming from me. It's just that kind of film. I don't know how else to describe it or put it into words. I loved it. I loved it, loved it, loved it, and I didn't really want it to end, and I loved sitting with Tilda as she goes through everything she's going through in this film. And I hope that if you check it out, you're able to check it out in a cinema as big and as loud as you can with an audience, and I hope that you get as much out of it as I did. I'm really excited to go back now and check out the rest of Apichatpong Weerasethakul filmography, because if they're anything like Memoria, I'm beyond excited to spend as much time in them as I need to. But what about you guys? Did you manage to catch Memoria at the London Film Festival, or are you excited to check it out when it does drop in cinemas wherever you are? Let me know whatever you thought about Memoria down in the comments below. We'll have a little chat. As usual, if you enjoyed this video and you do want to see me talk about more shit, go ahead and click subscribe. Links down there. You won't miss any new reviews from me. I'll see you guys soon for some more thoughts and more films. But until next time, Tilda, if you're watching this by some insane feat of just wild coincidence, take me on holiday with you, please. I want to walk with you through spaces of lush tropical scenery. Can you make that happen?